Hello, everybody. We are brought to you today by Routine. When you sleep, you lose between a pound and a half of water, mainly from expelling vapors and sweating. What do you do first thing in the morning? Well, most people wake up, don't drink water, and they go straight for the caffeine. They drink coffee, and by doing so, you actually dehydrate yourself even more. So Morning Routine is a product that contains half an organic lemon, 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, Himalayan sea salt, all 6 essential electrolytes, and most importantly, no sugar. They come in these little single serve packets, and they are part of every single morning for me. When I wake up, the first thing I do is grab my shaker bottle, pour one of these little single serve packets in, shake it up, and drink it. Genuinely, the days I use Morning Routine versus the days I don't, the days I do, I truthfully feel hydrated. I feel like my brain is just working in a way that it doesn't on days that I don't start my day off with one of these. Routine, trusted ingredients, made convenient. If you go to yourroutine.com and use code ShaneWhite30 at checkout, you'll get 30% off your first order. Again, this is just a daily morning supplement that I take. And a little hack for everyone listening too, I take these first thing in the morning. Sometimes when I feel just dehydrated, or maybe if you decide to have an alcoholic beverage, they're also great, in my opinion, after if you have a drink, having one of these afterwards before you go to bed to rehydrate. Just any part of your day, you can plug one of these in just to rehydrate yourself and get going. And like I said, go to yourroutine.com and use code ShaneWhite30 at checkout for 30% off your first order. Today, we're also brought to you by NeuroRoast. Today's episode is brought to you by NeuroRoast, a company that's dedicated to helping you optimize your brain function and overall well-being. NeuroRoast's flagship product is their premium mushroom coffee, which is made with an organic single origin coffee and their signature blend of 5 different functional mushrooms, including cordyceps, lion's mane, reishi, turkey tail, and chaga. Mushroom coffee is a new and exciting way to supercharge your day. Unlike regular coffee, which can cause jitters and crashes, mushroom coffee provides a more balanced and sustained energy boost, allowing you to stay focused and productive throughout the day. And with NeuroRoast ground and instant coffee options, you can enjoy the benefits of mushroom coffee wherever and whenever you need it. And here's some great news for my listeners today. NeuroRoast is offering an exclusive discount just for you. If you use the code ShaneWhite during checkout at neuroroast.com, that's NEUROAST.com, you'll get 30% off your order. Whether you choose ground or instant coffee, both will work. So again, that's Shane White at checkout for 30% off your purchase. So if you're looking for a natural and delicious way to boost your focus, memory, and overall cognitive function, give NeuroRoast mushroom coffee a try. With their commitment to quality and sustainability, you can trust that you're getting the best possible coffee for your brain and your body. And one last time, use that code ShaneWhite at checkout to get 30%. That is the prompt they gave me. Love the guys at NeuroRoast. Genuinely, folks, from me to you, their coffee is delicious. It does honestly have a different sort of caffeination way of it. The best way to describe it is it doesn't give you the jitters or the crash. I love their stuff. I get the flavored mushroom coffee, ground coffee. To be honest, it's one of my favorite afternoon coffee products. If I'm going to have a cup of coffee for some reason in the afternoon, whether it's a long, busy day, whatever it may be, I love taking their stuff because it really doesn't give you this like jittery, super elevated, caffeinated feeling, but you feel like you have energy and you don't have the crash later. So genuinely do love NeuroRoast. Again, their website is NEUROAST.com and the code is ShaneWhite. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening today. The episode is up after this. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Shane White Show. I am pumped today to have Derek Kessen on the podcast from OnCenter. Derek, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Shane, so good to be with you.
I'm pumped to meet you. Shout out to Paul if he's listening to this. He made the
I'm sure he
intro.
will.
Yeah, I hope he
He'll
does.
definitely listen to it and he'll judge everything I said. I
That's
can't
fine.
wait.
That's fine. We'll get Paul on here and then you can judge him back.
Perfect. That's how we work. That's our love language.
Yeah, that's a productive love language. I love it.
Yeah.
For everyone listening who maybe doesn't know who you are, doesn't know what OnCenter is, would you mind just giving a quick intro background to that to start it off?
Yeah, sure thing. I'll start with me. Short intro. I'm originally a small town kid, grew up in central Illinois. Best joke I always give there is we legitimately had bring your tractor to school day where I grew up. I think we got our first stoplight. I was in like maybe seventh grade, maybe eighth grade. So went to school for finance and econ, moved up to Chicago. My dad is from Pilsen, a neighborhood on the southwest side of Chicago. And so moved up here, had always kind of wanted to live in the bigger city. So Chicago's a big city for a small town kid, and worked in trading for about 13 years, helping community banks, so like the Main Street banks, ABC Bank and Trust of your hometown, help them with their bond portfolio and asset liability position for about 13 years. So a couple hundred banks across the U.S. And then, so that's with the firm here in Chicago, and then left in 2019 to found OnCenter, which is the company that I have the joy of leading today. So we are a middle market strategy organization. So we work with organizations, call it 10 million to 50 million. It's probably like our kind of sweet spot on the revenue side. And we like to work with pioneering organizations. So we like to work with people who are like moving fast, breaking stuff, building things that no one's ever built before. And so we kind of like try to balance this like optimism of like doing things that have never been done before, but also with this really grounded, like, how are we going to get there and how are we going to do that? So we try to bring some of that clarity to people facing inflection points, change. All of that stuff is really hard. You're dealing with workforces of people, you're dealing with culture, you're dealing with different reporting structures and things like that. So that's our OnCenter team here in Chicago. We've worked with about 75 leaders, I think, in about 30 countries since we got started in 2019. There's 5 of us here on the team plus an intern. So we've got 6 with intern Zach on the team. It's been really good for the last almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years this month.
Wow, congratulations. First of all, that's awesome. Yeah. So to kind of go back to your 0 to 1 story, which is what I love to dive into, how did you come up with like your trading? It sounds like you had a really good career. I'm sure you were doing well in that career. That's usually a career that people do pretty well in. Where did the kind of the concept come from for OnCenter in general?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm kind of the Swiss Army knife guy. I'm decent at a lot of things. I'm not excellent at almost anything. So I can almost always find somebody who's better than me at everything that I'm good at. But there's not a lot of things that I'm just absolutely won't try and get a B minus, so I'm pretty fearless in that. So it's been kind of hard to always like know what I'm good at because I'll always try things. So I was leading a division at a trading firm here in Chicago. And so we're setting kind of like macro strategy for these community banks across the US. And our team was great. We had a lot of really, really smart, really good people at the company. We'd grown from, I think I was employee number maybe 60, and we grew to about 350 people in the time that I was there. And so that's a lot of growth, both in people. Also, we grew in products as well. So we were providing a lot more products in that time. And I think I had gone to business school at Northwestern here in town for about 2015 to 2018. And I did study finance again, just because it was kind of like in my sweet spot of things that I had always done. But I also just leaned into organizational psychology and strategy. And I was trying to learn how do I be a good manager? I think this was like kind of the onset of people my age. So I'm an elder millennial. I turned 40 this year. So we like kind of noticed the things that were broken about work, but we weren't really brave enough to try to challenge anything until people a little bit younger than us, I think, came along and were like, we're not doing it that way anymore. And so I think that time for me was the time when people were like, wow, this relationship that we have with work is really toxic. And like the way that we organize our teams, or like the way that we hire and fire people, and all these like really hard organizational things, it's really hard to get those things right. And so I wanted to make sure in a team that had really talented people, we had really strong traders. I was never going to be a really, really good trader. I was an okay analyst, but I was much better at leading the team of analysts than I was at being the analyst. And so like looking out of these really, really smart people, I'm like, well, how do I make sure that I'm a good manager and I'm a good leader for all of these people? And so that's why I had gone back to business school and was really leaning into some of the more like organizational psychology things. And then I think, we were going through changing a lot at the company because we needed to. We'd grown a lot, and it was
Yeah.
time to kind of make sure like we had people kind of aligned to the strategy that we were pursuing at that time. And just seeing how hard that was of a puzzle to solve for really good, really smart people. And so I think coming into 2019, I was realizing that like, wow, I'm actually way better at this than I am at running this team of analysts. And there's actually people who are on my team that are actually probably better than me at doing some of those things. And so in 2019, I ended up going out on my own, founding OnCenter like pretty much right away. And initially I was like, I just want to help people. I just want to find people who are trying to do really hard things and saddle up with them and see if we can get that done. So my first client was a company called the Humanity Share based out of Kenya. And so they were doing clean water projects and also girls' education and kind of sustainable agriculture for this like rural community in Kajiado County, Kenya. And so I flew to Kenya with them. We went up to Ethiopia, one of their other communities. And so another like really smart, really good people. And I said, well, I can help you with this organizational piece. And they really wanted it. And so that was where we kind of tested everything and said, holy cow, this is really good. We need to do this with more people. And so we've kind of grown since then.
Wow. And so, one of the pieces of that I always love to break down, because I think everyone's story of starting something is totally different. For you, having the career you did and finding that interest that itch you wanted to go after, were you able to do that while you kept your job and kind of do it as a side hustle? Or did you just have to kind of go all in and you quit your job and you were like, I'm just going to figure this out? How did you do that?
Yeah, I probably should have. That would have been the smart way to do it. So if I were advising somebody else, I would probably say to do that. But I think we had our hands full. We were pretty lean as a company, I think. And so I would have felt like I kind of had this like other outside business activity that I was doing that would have been kind of taking away from my time. I mean, I would have, email conversations with my boss between midnight and 2 a.m. Like there was no way that I was going to be doing kind of a separate thing at the same time, but that is a good way to do it. So yeah, we had kind of arrived at the end of the day, like it wasn't my decision to leave. So we had kind of like gotten through part of the restructure. I'd helped with part of that process and then I moved on. So it wasn't like I just kind of like bonsai went out into the next thing. So I kind of had to find what the next thing was, but it fell right into it. So
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And for you, give everyone kind of a background into like how that felt. I always think it's interesting. I know, I don't know how much but like me and Paul have talked. The business that me and my co-founder created, it's a service business as well. And I think one of the things I was excited to talk to you about is I really haven't had a lot of service businesses on the podcast. Like most have been CPG. It's product focused. It's getting retail distribution. It's kind of the same game that we all dealt with when we were at our X Bar. So for you, what was that like? Because service businesses are just, for people listening, are just totally different, right? I mean, you have a service, you're trying to get clients, you're trying to do really good work, keep clients, and really like help them, right? At the end of the day, that's what you're there to do. You're there as a support function and really to make their lives easier, is the way I always explain it. For you, as you set out, how did you think about what OnCenter could be? I mean, now you're fast forwarding 4 years from that point. When you first set out to do it, were you like, let's just see if I can get a couple clients. Let's see if this thing really has some legs. Like, what were some of those early days and feelings? Because I know from personal experience, it's a scary feeling when you're kind of putting yourself out there and like, I think I have a skill I can really help someone with, but I don't have any clients yet. I don't have no revenue coming in.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's probably two things that I had learned in my previous role that I think are probably countercultural to how people kind of solve problems today. So I'm grateful to have really learned these things over the 13 years that I was at my previous company, because I was able to take these forward and kind of use these principles as part of the foundation. So the first one is asking the question, I wonder if that's true. So everyone around me will credit me today with having come up with that, which I'm just stealing from people who are smarter than me. But basically, it's this idea like, we do a lot of work overseas. We have an investment portfolio in 16 countries. That was the thing I haven't told you about yet. And so we're kind of like reinventing investing in the frontier and emerging markets. We're advising on this like kind of combination of strategy and human-centered design that like nobody else does. And where that came from is we said, well, here's the way people are doing it. And everyone says this is how you're supposed to do it. I wonder if that's true. And
Hmm.
so it's simply taking the time to inspect all of the underlying assumptions that go into this is the way we do things. It's not saying the way that we're doing it is wrong, but it might be. And so, like, let's actually go back and test and make sure that the assumptions we're making along the way are leading to the right approach. And so I knew that because of the way that I had learned it over the course of 13 years, I could pull things apart and put them back together in a way that I knew that we were always utilizing the best information and frameworks available to deliver the product or service that we were delivering. So that was the first thing. It's like this like inherent intellectual curiosity to like always be testing and to like never think our baby is too pretty. I mean, like that's kind of the thing with startup mentality too. Right. It's like it's really hard. You are afraid to kill the baby. Like we've burnt this place down 3 times and rebuilt it because we're like, if there's something that challenges our assumption, we have to go back and make sure. So that was one thing is I kind of like could lean on that as a methodology. And then I think the other piece was sort of this like unlocking a different kind of economy. And so, and I'll go to like a business school principle. So Porter's 5 Forces is a business school principle for where like you're sitting in the middle and kind of like all of the people that you interact with from your business are on the outside. So it's like your suppliers, that's one force, your clients, and it could be, you know, distributors, other people along the way, partners. And the whole principle is about how you analyze the power that you have in that relationship so that you can exploit it to improve your competitive advantage for yourself. So what we said, and this was what we did at my old company, is we would say, actually, what is the best way to serve our client for the long term? And we're going to have these awesome, loyal relationships for a really, really long time. And we'll actually sacrifice revenue today for both of us to win long term. And so that was just a wholly different thing than you kind of see. And there's surely other people who do it, but most of the time you see the people who are like, I'm trying to earn as much revenue as I can for my earnings call at the end of this quarter.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I think that those two mentalities were really a part of like how we shaped the DNA of this company from the beginning. And then I would say, as we were building, to your point, I didn't want to be alone. So that's probably my worst nightmare would be like trying to build a company by myself. And so like those first few people that you bring in are everything. And so I had found a friend of mine I had met in 2015, Jen. So Jen Giacchino, I had asked her to come on as my advisor because she had grown and scaled a nonprofit to 20 cities in 3 countries, including Kenya and Indonesia. And so I was like, this woman knows how to scale a business. Yeah. She knows how to do it in a really lean way, and she knows how to build teams. And she knows, like, I didn't even know how to set up an LLC, you know? So I brought her on actually as my advisor. She thankfully agreed. And then throughout the pandemic, she and her team ended up selling their curriculum to MIT and closing down the nonprofit. And MIT still runs their curriculum in women's prisons. And she was like, hey, can I do what you're doing with you?
Oh, wow.
Like, I would love if you would do.
Yeah.
That's why I brought you, and I didn't know that I'd ever be able to get you. But so that like just kind of happened. But I think that initial like having that corpus of a team, and I would say all 5 people on our team like are people that I've like had my eye on like throughout my career. Like I would love to work with that person someday.
Oh, that's cool.
And just have like been fortunate to have those people come at the right point to build the team.
No, that's cool. I mean, I think that's probably not a super common way people build teams, but it's a really awesome way if you can pull that off, right? Like if you kind of identify all-stars and you're like someday, because we kind of do the same thing. Like a lot of the industries that we probably all transact in are a lot smaller than you'd believe. So you always can see like the hardworking people in the room type of thing. You're like, that's a good person to have on my team. Hopefully someday. I love that.
Well, and they got to be right for the role, right? So it can't just be like they're on the market and you're like, oh man, like you could stretch maybe a person, but if you get somebody who's really, really good, but it's not a thing you need, then they're going to be banging their head against the wall trying to give you the thing that you don't want or need.
Sure.
So like, it can't just be adding for the sake of adding because they're good. They actually do have to have the right fit too. But
that makes a ton of sense. And so you get your first client, and it's an international client. How are you getting international clients? Was this something from your past roles? You like knew folks in those areas, or how did you make those connections?
Yeah, so I might have fibbed a little bit because we got a client, but they didn't pay us. So I
Okay.
was
Yeah,
like,
there's
I got to
those.
test this and see if this is any good. And it had just so happened that I had a friend who had been on the board of a nonprofit for a little over 10 years. And it had started as like a project. And it was just a project. Some women from the US had happened to be in Kenya in this village, met some of the village leaders, and they were like, here's a thing we need. We need to drill a hole to get some water. And they were like, let's see if we can go raise some money from it for it. And so it just started as this one thing, and it expanded into this whole kind of holistic model. And they're awesome. And so they had grown to the point where they were raising real money, they were building programs. And my friend Kate, who was an architect, left her job as an architect to become the second executive director of this company.
Oh,
And
wow.
so she knew that I was starting this thing. And so she was like, hey, like, I'd like, and again, Kate, really smart person, right? She's an architect. And she was just like, I've never set a strategy before. And like, surely she'll be good at it. She just needs to know what the framework is, right? And so it was a perfect match to come alongside them. And so, yeah, so I think they paid for my flights and my food and maybe a couple beers. And that was enough for me to be able to test it all out.
Wow, that's really wild. And then for someone like that, like when these companies are approaching you or you're finding them as a client, like what is the OnCenter? Like, what's your big? I don't want to call it a pitch because it's really not a pitch. It's like a value prop that you're bringing to them. Like, what is the problem you're solving, and then specifically like the solution you walk away with, just to give everyone that's listening a little bit of an understanding of like what one of these relationships that you guys are building looks like.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, we're like solving how things work, right? So they're trying to solve a problem, they're trying to deliver a product to a market or a service to a market. And for whatever reason, they're either trying to change something or they're looking out at like how everything is organized. It's just not working or it's causing friction. And so the way that we look at it is we don't look at anything in a silo, but we look at strategy, organization, and operations. So I think that probably is a differentiator for us from the beginning because there's a lot of firms out there that will say like, "Oh, we'll come help you on strategy for a weekend." And then we'll do like a facilitation, we'll spend 2 days with them and boop, here's everything that was in your brain. We organized it on a piece of paper for you. You'll pay us $15,000, $20,000 and we all go about our merry way.
Got
So
it.
what we said was there's a bunch of problems with that. One, most of the time when you set a strategy that way, you get really unhappy because it probably sits in a drawer and you don't do anything with it. And that's for one of any number of reasons. One, you didn't include enough people's perspectives. So you're usually going to do like an executive offsite. You're only going to include your executive leaders, and you're not including the people who talk to your clients.
Mm-hmm.
Or, wow, this might be crazy. What if we talk to your clients? And what if we actually involve them in the process, which they love? Your best clients love that. And so they
Oh, I
actually
bet.
get to be a
Yeah.
part of like, oh man, they want to hear my opinion on how I'm interacting with this. And so, and usually they give you glowing reviews, but we'll dig in there and find out like kind of what's going on. The other reason is like there's usually organizational problems. So a lot of times it's not just a new strategy that is preventing a strategy from taking place. If there's been multiple strategies in a row that didn't get executed well, there's probably a people, structure, leadership, um, culture, or kind of like how people interact with change. Like one of those five things are probably one of the things that are actually preventing your strategy from taking place. So we kind of identify all of the touch points that come between like a person on a team and a goal.
Hmm.
How are they interacting with that goal? Do they know the goal exists? A lot of times, like teams don't even know what the strategy is. So I think managers, we can forget as leaders and managers that we have to rinse and repeat and repeat and repeat what we're doing and why. And it just kind of falls and people get stuck in the day to day and they forget that the strategy is out there. So
Sure. That
what we
makes
do is
sense.
we spend way longer and way deeper on really uncovering like what is working, what's not working with the teams, what is the strategy that we're going after. A thing that I think teams really forget about is like my ability. So there's always a gap kind of between our stated culture as an organization and what we actually do when we're in the office. Our company has a gap, your company has a gap, we all have a gap, but it's just how big is that gap? Because that gap is actually one of the primary drivers of somebody's happiness or engagement in the workplace. So
Hmm.
it's how much do I understand and relate to the goals that we're going after? how much do I believe that the rest of my team is aligned with and pursuing those goals? And how much do I believe the people that are holding me accountable are aligned with and measuring our performance based on reaching those goals? That gap is usually between like, here's our vision and, we're excellent and we have integrity and whatever our kind of like values are, and what we actually do when we come in every day. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking for, and we're helping people navigate along the way of pursuing this change, because especially if their strategy is different, like what happens if you have the wrong team for that strategy? Or like what happens if you've been pursuing this strategy for 100 years and your teams were supposed to be, don't risk anything, this is the golden goose, make sure everything runs properly, get a good profit margin, keep costs low, and now you're asking them to invent a new product. Well, if they're inventing a new product, they might need to take risks. They're going to need to be entrepreneurial. Like
Sure. Yeah.
those might be the same people, but you have to unlock those mindsets, or they might be different people. And what does that mean? So I know you asked for more of an elevator pitch, but I gave you a
that's
longer
great.
version.
I mean,
Those
that
are
makes a
kind
lot
of
of
the things
sense.
that we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, and you would be the person that would know this, but again, just to give everyone some anecdotal experience, being at our X bar, and I'm sure you've heard stories from Paul, we kind of went through that growth stage that sounds like you went through. Like when I joined, I think I was number 60. And then by the time I left, at one point we had almost 250, I believe. And, we're selling protein bars. So that means like all these teams that were super thin and lean became big teams. And I remember even there, the challenge of, okay, this is our macro, this is where we're heading as an organization, as a group, as a team. And then how that even dwindles down to functions, and then like, okay, what's Shane responsible for, and like how does he help build that? Like it's complicated. And then before that, I was at like Fortune 10 company. I worked at I worked at Walmart.com, and before that I was at like an engine manufacturer, which is a Fortune 100 company. And then thinking back to my days there, I'm like, they tried, but oh my god, no way were we all on the same page. No way.
Right.
It's just so many people, and we were all in our own little silos. So just to give like two totally different scenarios of how hard that is as you grow, I can totally see where you guys kind of come in. And so that makes sense to me. Like, I've lived through that and can see where there's a lot of value in what you build. It seems like there's a million different organizations that you guys probably work with, which is an awesome business opportunity for you guys. How do you even go through the motions of like vetting people and bringing on a client? Because it seems like, from what I'm hearing from you guys, like, what you don't do is what a lot of consultants would do, which is like they come in, like you said, for a couple days, they kind of rinse, repeat a process, and they leave and they go to the next one. It sounds like you guys are much more involved. You're like embedded in the organization for a while. So I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, but you guys must like vet and really take your time picking clients before you just jump in, because it seems like you guys invest a lot of energy into each and every one.
Yeah. And I think like we're still new, right? Too. So we're like turning 4. And so we want everyone to be a raving fan of what we're doing. So like we've said no to people before, and it's not because they couldn't have been a good fit, but it might have been like, I don't know that they're actually going to use this, or they're going to be ready. And I want them to actually like get the result that we're trying to provide. I will say I trust my sales team. So Paul and Ben, like they live and breathe this all day, every day, and I get to kind of like pop in and out of it. But it really is like our clients have to really want something different and more robust, and they have to be serious about it. And so we'll spend probably about 550 hours as a team on their strategy. And they'll have some people that will spend maybe 20 to 30 over the course of 3 months. So they're not spending nearly as much time as we are, but we have to make sure that their teams are engaged along the way.
Right.
20 to 30 hours is a lot more than, 10 hours on a Saturday. So that's a bigger commitment. Now that's spread out over time. So where does that come from? I've gone to so many workshops in my life as either as an individual or as a member of a team. And almost 10 out of 10 times, you go back and like you remember it for a few days, and then you kind of just like fall back into whatever other patterns you had.
Sure.
So like there is time that it takes to establish these new disciplines, and there's also time that it takes for like these things to be revealed. And so in the selection process, it almost is like, I didn't really think about this until getting on this call, but maybe we'll have to start using this. It's almost like I'm an Enneagram 8, I'm an ENTJ. It's almost like that personality that we're looking for. Not that we're looking for Enneagram 8s, that'd be crazy. There's probably too many of us already. But like we're looking for the personality of a company as much as we're looking for like what the company is doing. And we want to work on things that are crazy and hard.
Mm,
So
okay.
we're looking for, and it could be crazy and hard because no one's ever done it before, or it could be crazy and hard because this organization is changing in a crazy and hard way. And we know that like that's one of our strengths, is being able to walk with people through things that are rocky and hard, and not tell them like this is going to be super easy, don't worry about it, but actually say like it's going to be hard, but we're going to be there. And so that is a different mentality for a team to be like, okay, we're going to do this hard thing. I think for us, we probably would be less excited to work with like a manufacturing company that's been around for 50 years and they're just going to like, they're trying to cut costs for the next like 3 to 5 years. We'd say like, that's super good. You can find a consultant that will help you do that. But
Sure.
we want to do things like, it's kind of selfish in a way, but like we want to work on exciting stuff. Like I get out of bed to like come work on really hard things. People trying to, like, some of our clients are in like 30 countries, you know, like that's hard. There's intercultural things you have to like navigate there. Like that's the kind of stuff we really want to do.
No, I
So
love
I
that.
think,
I think we need more of that. I mean, I know, not to bring up what I do, but I mean, like we do the same thing. Like we vet
yeah,
the brands we want to work with really, really hard, because we want to be excited with everyone we work with. And like, I work with a lot of CPG brands, as I mentioned. So like, I want to only work with brands that you'd see me walking around and eating and drinking, right? Like if I don't put it in my body because I don't like the food and trust the food, I don't want to be behind it selling it, right? Like it's just, I don't, after working at RX and kind of like drinking that Kool-Aid, you can see when you run any type of business and you're actually really fired up with who you work with and what you do, it's a
mm-hmm.
totally different feeling every morning. And I feel that same thing. It sounds like you're feeling. So I give you a lot of credit, because it's easy probably to chase some of the other ones that maybe, have deeper pockets, but they're not exciting projects to work on, right? Like that's
Yeah,
always going to be there.
yeah, 100%.
Very exciting. So for you guys, you just turned 4. What does the next, I always say like 1, 3, 5. Like, do you guys have some North Star visions where you're trying to build OnCenter, or do you like where you're at? Like, where do you feel like you're heading?
Yeah, so we have like a few different, we call them gates. So like when we hit certain like revenue gates, then that means like we can start dreaming about specific things. And
Okay.
so like we've set these like visions for like when we get to this gate, then these are the dreams that we've said we want to explore. But right now, like you can't think about that dream because you have to think about the things that are going to get us to this gate. So I think a couple things. One, we don't want to be a team of 5. We would love to be, 3 to 5 years from now, a team of 20, so like we do want to scale rapidly. So we're overweight, I would say, in sales capacity right now. So we have 3 consultants and 2 salespeople. So we could
Mm-hmm.
probably get to 10 and still have 2 salespeople, right? We could probably get to 15 and probably still have 2 salespeople. So we're like kind of loading the funnel right now because we want to shoot fast and start building teams of consultants that we can grow to be delivering this methodology alongside of us. So we've kind of like ironed out the methodology over the last 4 years, and now we're like really happy with it, to a point where we would say like we actually want to scale this methodology. People want it, love it, need it, and we can train other people to do it. So that's one thing. I think it's about like kind of scaling our team and scaling our impact. And then I think it's also around like the types of clients. Like, I don't know if you guys have experienced this too, but early on, like we didn't know, we were gun shy. Like, I think we were like, I don't know if like these people would buy from us, So like
Sure. Yeah.
we stepped into it,
Like a little
and
bit of
I think
imposter syndrome, maybe a little bit,
a
because you're
hundred
new.
percent,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. And so that keeps you from like a higher revenue bucket as well. And we haven't had a single client that we weren't able to deliver. And so like as we've gone up the stack to bigger and bigger and bigger, we don't ever want to forget about the small fry, because like those are the people that we think like, so we work with for-profits and nonprofits. Getting a nonprofit to $1 million is really hard. Getting a business to $1 million is really hard. And so like we love that segment, and we know that they probably can't afford us. So we have ways of reaching down and making sure that we're like able to kind of like bring those people along also. But we want to do that by working with some of the big boys that we know we can do that. And so that's where we've
Sure.
kind of grown into that segment over the last probably year or so, where before we were kind of gun shy to kind of get into that. So I think that that's kind of our next goal, is like really being more sustainable. So it doesn't sound as exciting, but I think
No,
also
it's
like
great though.
we're just always growing and changing methodologies and extending from kind of starting with strategy, moving into organizational design, and really now we're in more like transformation and change. So
Very cool. No, I love that. I mean, it's always evolving, right? Like, I think that's the cool thing about starting and building a business is like what you start with and where you maybe will end in the future. You probably will not, you would have never been able to imagine where you're heading, which I think is so exciting. I know for me, it's like every day is
100%.
different. It's always changing. Every week's new. Derek, I love asking these questions as we're winding down with a few more minutes. The first one, this question, I would love to, because now you've been running a business, you're building a business, so you have a lot of plates you're spinning and holding and trying to keep moving in the right direction. What tools do you use to, and I love you talking about like getting the organization and helping organizations all get on the same wavelength of like what they're building towards. So I'm assuming you personally probably have some tools that help you do this. So what tools do you use to not only like plan what your, macro goals are, maybe your yearly goals, but then all the way down to like, what's the stuff Derek's getting done today? Are you a pen and paper guy? Do you use planners? Do you have apps? Like what is Derek using on a daily basis to keep growing OnCenter and just evolving as a person?
I am super not fancy here. So here's my challenge. Because I work in so many different geographies, there's like your preferred communication method for everything. So like working internationally, people use WhatsApp for work.
Oh, sure.
Right. So it's like I almost have all of these communication channels that I do actually have a really hard time kind of funneling them all into like kind of figuring them out. But I love a paper list. I think part of that is just because like I get to cross it off and I feel like I accomplished something. I try to be really diligent about my email. So I archive right away. There is no spam that comes into almost any of my emails. So like I keep that all like really, really clean. So I don't have any productivity tools. I also like try to reject that I need to be productive all the time.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's actually probably a good one.
I'm not that good at it, but that's what I try. I mean, I told you I was up at 3:30 this morning. So I think I could probably learn from listening to the last 5 minutes of your show.
I really should like clip a bunch of them. 10. That'd be cool to clip a bunch of them just to see what everyone answers that question.
Yeah. What are all the tools that everyone's using?
Well, it's funny, Derek. Most people I ask that question to have almost the exact same response you gave, which is like,
really? Okay.
Again, it's like they almost like self-deprecate a little bit on like, I don't do anything fancy. It's funny though. I think a lot of people that are creative and are trying to build things. It's the same thing. Like they're not following this like perfectly planned out game plan, because that's not what their life looks like, because they're running a business that's unpredictable and it's changing constantly. You know what I mean?
It's also like I have salespeople too, right? So if I miss an email, like they'll email me again.
Okay,
like
sure.
Like we'll figure it out. So I prioritize certain people, and make sure that I'm always making sure that I'm responding to like the things that are like related to current deliverables. But yeah, no, Paul thinks I need superhuman, but we'll find out.
I've heard that one a bunch. I always share it because I've been using it for so long now. I do blame it for like at least hitting goals. I've been using this thing called a full focus planner. I don't know if you can really see it.
Oh,
full focus planner. Again, it's not rocket science. Literally, it lasts. It's like got a single page for every day of every. So it's like you need a new notebook every quarter. But in the very front, you put like your 10 annual goals. And I think what really helps me is every week there's like a check-in process that it kind of like prompts you through. And you set up what's called like a big 3 for the week. So it's like, okay, look at your goals. What are like 3 things that if you got done, if these big 3 things happen this week, you took a step towards at least some of your goals that are on the first page. And then every day it's got a big 3 for the day. And so for my brain, it's like when we have multiple clients and there's family stuff and health stuff I'm trying to achieve, it really helps you kind of boil down like, okay, if I at least get this stuff done, I'm making progress versus just being busy.
Yeah. I'll show you. This is like what my calendar looks like. I hope people can probably see that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So like I don't put a lot of like hold this time other than I knew I needed to get a haircut before I was going to be on this. So I held my time before this podcast. But like, I don't get to get things done during the day. Like everyone gets to book my calendar whenever they want. If the time is open. Now, I obviously ask people to be respectful, but I think that that's also maybe a thing that helps me is that I guess as the boss, like everyone owns their own meetings on my calendar. So I'm not sending a lot of calendar invites to other people because they own when the thing is happening. And if they need to move it, they go find another time on my calendar and they move it to that time. because I don't want to lose time with somebody being like, hey, Derek, can you do Tuesday at 4? Just like,
Sure.
if the time is open, you take it, and I roll in and I go. So like,
Yeah.
I don't want to lose time with like logistics. So like trying to push as much logistics away from myself is probably, maybe that's a productivity.
That's really smart. So for you though, like when you have tangible things, and that you just get it done when there's openings and or at night or morning, like how do you actually get stuff done? Because I feel like sometimes that can turn into like so many things being booked back to back to back that all of a sudden you get to the end of the day and you're like, I'm going to be working all night.
Yeah, Shane, this Labor Day weekend was the first weekend I didn't work most of the weekend. I only worked 10 hours over Labor Day weekend.
Good for you.
So, you know, that's how I get deliverables done.
Got it. I get it. Yeah. And it's funny. I tell my wife this all the time because like I have a little one at home and I'm married. So like trying to balance all that is tough. I lean on my planner, and I've really gotten into time blocking again. A fun one for people listening, Rob Deerdeck, which is a guy I never knew was all about like optimization until recently. Cause like a guy that I worked with at RX Bar, he's now his CMO. And I actually had him on the podcast recently. It's not out yet. But if you listen to Rob Deerdeck's podcast, he does like one a week. He talks about like time blocking, and he's got like a tracker that every day he updates with going back and looking at his calendar yesterday. And it's like an Excel sheet. I can actually send it to you, Derek, because I recreated it. And I've been using it, and it's really eye-opening because you start to see like, okay, this is how much time I put towards what I'm working on. This is how much time family, friends, leisure. And like, if that aligns with what I wanted to achieve, great. There's been some weeks where I'm like, I said yes to way too many things that really don't fit into like my priorities right now. It's funny. Yep. There's a million different ways to be productive, but I actually like what you're saying. Like, because I'm one of those people that I definitely stress myself out if I don't feel like I was productive enough. And that's probably not a good, healthy, long-term thing, right?
So I have a different one. It's not productivity, but I had to decide because one of the things I believe about myself is that I'm reliable to other people. Yeah. Which probably isn't true, but it's a thing that I like to believe.
And so, you know what's funny you say that? That's something I feel like I am, but I know there are things that slip through. So I at the end of the day, it's so funny you brought that up. I feel like the reason I'm always trying to be more productive is to make sure that is like a check mark when people think of me. I've never said that out loud, but it's honestly, it's something I think about every day.
Yeah. And it's like, what do I think? Like, do I think like if I don't get a deliverable done for somebody on time, like they're not going to love me anymore, or they're going to quit or whatever? Like, so going into this year, I'm like, I need to get comfortable, like letting people down a little bit more.
Interesting.
Like, I need to just be okay with the fact that sometimes like I'm not superhuman. I need to know my limits. And if it's like the difference between me making it through this week and feeling like a human, or like missing on a deliverable for somebody and they have to work an extra hour or two because of me, like I might just have to do that from time to time.
That's a really good one to close out on, because I do think it's a hard one, especially honestly, I think being a service-based business, because at the end of the day, you're trying to promote a service, but there's also only so many hours in the day. It's a tough balance. That's a really, really interesting one.
And no one's asking me to do it. Maybe I'll add that too.
Like, okay. That's even different. Yeah.
Right. It's like, no one's like, can you please like everyone's like, Derek, like have more fun. You should probably work less. Like I can do different. It. Don't work it right. So I'm like, I need to like,
Sure. Yeah. Mine's different probably because I definitely have people asking me for things, and some things are like, they just take a lot of time. So it's like allocating enough time to get the kind of stuff done. My thing is trying to just be more proactive. I always want to be the person that's like, hey, if I can't get it done by this time, this is when I think I'll get it done. I'm allocated time tomorrow or this weekend or whatever it is. That's, I think, where my head's gone lately, is like, I want to be the one that's letting them know if something's going to be late versus them being like, hey, where is this? I hate that. That's like, I feel like I've failed if someone's like, I asked you for this, where is it? Like, it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I'm like, oh, it's even on my list, and I didn't update you on. It's like, or
like
that's
you get the email that's like, hey, can I get the thing? And then like enough time goes by that you get the email that's like, hey, about my email I sent about the thing that I haven't gotten yet, and you're like, now I've got an email about an email about a thing.
About an email, yeah. You want to avoid those. That's what's keeping the inbox clean is all about.
That's right.
Right. The last question, Derek, is just source of knowledge. So, a book, a podcast, an article you've read lately. Does anything pop out right away in your mind that you'd love to share with the audience today?
Yeah, the Shane White podcast.
Thank you. There we go.
This one, you probably get this one a lot. I love the Knowledge Project.
You know, someone has said that before. I've never listened to it though.
Oh, so good. And it's like all about highlighting like people who have accomplished things, like what got to the heart of like how that all happened. And
Okay.
so it's similar in the ways that like you try to unpack some of like those pieces. So that's a really good one by Shane Parrish. And then Hidden Brain by Shankar Vedantam, which is like kind of all about like unpacking like kind of the psychology that underlies a lot of the parts of like everyday life and different kinds of things. So like
Oh,
again, me
cool.
being like like trying to get in and like understand like how people and teams come up with ideas and then make those ideas actually work. Like a lot of that is really human. And so that kind of like helps me just like always stay in that rhythm of like, this problem isn't a problem because of something on paper. It's a problem because we're people. And so
Yeah.
that one's a really good one for me for that. So
Love that. That's a really good one. Last and most important question. If people want to get a hold of you, get a hold of OnCenter, or just follow along in your guys' journey, what's the best way to do that?
yeah, you probably noticed we are all over LinkedIn. We love LinkedIn as a team. So definitely find us like LinkedIn/in/Derek Kessen, just like my name, DEREKKESSEN.
And I'll add these
Um,
links to the show notes too.
yeah, connect with us there, because like that's the best way to get in touch with either me or other people on the team. And we love connecting with anybody. Like we're in this whole work thing, startup thing with you guys. So
Yeah.
we'd love to connect with folks. So bring
Love
it.
it. Well, awesome,
Yeah.
Derek. Well, thank you for coming on the show, man. It was a pleasure meeting you and pleasure hearing more about your story. And we'll stay in
Yeah.
touch.
Thank you so much for having me.